All right, we're back at it on the SuccessFlow podcast and kind of picking up off of the Stoicism theme. Wanted to check in with you. There's some wild stuff going on right now as we start 2025. We've talked about the goal setting, intentions for the year, and then tied in some Stoicism to kind of frame up the mindset on how we're perceiving the world around us and what we can control. But how's 25 starting for you, man? Because there's a lot going on in the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, 2025, 4 weeks in, by the time this episode drops, it's there's definitely been a lot of crazy things that have happened in the world. Personally, things have been pretty good. I mean, I've never been busier, and so it's like, I think I've in the last 2 months probably put in the same amount of hours and effort that I did the 4 months prior combined. And but it's what it takes during the busy time of the year. But I think to your point though, 2025 starting off a little bit of chaos around the world. You got a new president coming in. You got the Los Angeles wildfires, which you had the NFL playoffs, which you're a Rams fan. I'm a Vikings fan. And, because of the wildfires that moved that game to Arizona and we both got to go to that game, you ended up on the good end of that. But there's a lot of people going through some chaos. That's for sure.
Well, then Mother Nature struck with chaos in the Rams game last night.
Yeah, with the snow and LA, the Rams aren't used to the snow. At least Stafford is. The quarterback used to play in Detroit. So
yeah, not to compare the NFL to the LA wildfires, which is really, really jarring. Just seeing the footage, and more than the footage, the response from the people that live there, hearing some of those interviews, it's pretty hard to wrap your mind around the devastation there.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, you've seen some of those videos driving down Pacific Coast Highway and you're like, dude, I've driven down Pacific Coast Highway. We've spent time in those places on the beach for family vacations and stuff. And, it's kind of similar to the Maui fires, right? I mean, that seemed close to home, but yet still so far away. And I feel like LA just seemed even closer to home because we've been there so many times.
Yeah. And such a key part of the American economy, whether you like it or not. I mean, it hit close to home. We have quite a few colleagues in LA, and one of our leaders did lose their home in LA. And it's when it's that close to home, obviously your empathy goes out to everyone, but when, people personally that have been displaced, and it's not just the money aspect. It's your home. That's where
all the memories and
where your kids are. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of when, so Kim's family, my wife, Kimberly, her mom had a cabin up in Payson, and it burnt down, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. We used to go up there before we had kids. We'd go up there and just spend some time, just get away, get out of town and go spend some time at the cabin. And but that's where they kept all of their Christmas decorations. They would do family Christmases up there and all that stuff, all the ornaments and everything. And they got the house repainted. And the cause of the fire was the paint, basically combusted out in the heat on the deck. And it was wet. It was wet rags or whatever. And, the painters left it out on the deck. And because the elevation and the heat, it was over the summer, it just combusted into a flame and the whole thing burned down. And I just remember the devastation in her family just from, it wasn't their primary residence, but it really was those memories that they could never get back. All the picture books and albums and ornaments and, all that stuff that they had kept up there. And so what's going on in LA and still is going on, it's just crazy. It's how many weeks it's been. And, they're getting more and more containment, but that thing, as the wind dies down, it'll get a little bit easier, but it's the 100-mile-an-hour winds are whipping through there that, changes. That's what really fuels that thing, right?
That's what winds.
Yeah.
I think that's a great transition to that story with Kim's family, because tying it back to the SuccessFlow podcast and what the key takeaway is today, again, kind of building off of Stoicism, but making it less a philosophy or values based, but when these things happen, what are when chaos strikes, what systems, habits, and mindsets do you have in place to stand firm? And when we were kind of prepping for this, the Mike Tyson quote is one that gets thrown around a lot. And that's one of the other key things I think doing this podcast has made me realize is cliches are cliches for a reason, or some of these quotes that stand the test of time. Yeah, it's easy to regurgitate quotes, but Mike Tyson's "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face."
Yeah,
it's so true, and that's exactly what's going on. And it seems to be a cycle of, as we transition to years, these events start happening, and we're so open to them with social media, with the news, media in general, that it can impact us. But when it hits your personal life, I think that I've heard stats that we go through 4 to 5 on average, life-changing Mike Tyson punches to the mouth across our lifetime. And you just went through one that may not be, I don't know, I think it's pretty significant with the freak chaos accident you had, taking that header and a real serious injury. That probably qualifies in that, 5 key things that hit you in life and really shake the foundation of your existence. And so it's really figuring out, do we have a plan for these things? Is our operating systems good enough to kind of put ourselves in that position that when chaos strikes, how are we going to respond?
Yeah, a few months ago, it definitely was one of those punches. It wasn't a punch in the mouth. It was basically scalping myself.
Haymaker to the dome.
I think it would have been a lot worse if I took a header straight into the face into that cinder block wall. But that was definitely one of those pivotal moments. And that's what's interesting about pivotal moments. Everyone, you kind of think about like, what are all the great things? This new career that I got, if I didn't say yes to that, like where would my life be? I've got this success going, or this new relationship, how good it's going. If I didn't say yes to that friend to go out that one night, and you meet that, the love of your life, and it's all, you think of these pivotal moments as always being positive, but pivotal moments are pivotal moments, whether they're positive or negative. And so in these situations, these ones where you get popped in the face and kind of wakes you up a little bit, they do change the trajectory of your life in an incredible way. Even though it was a negative situation, it just makes you sit back and reassess and think about what's the most important aspects of your life and what you want to continue doubling down on. And so, when I had that freak accident playing hoops back in November, I'm, about 3 months removed now and back to 100%. But it took a good 2 full months to really get back at it. And even when I fully recovered from the concussion and the laceration on my head and all that stuff, my neck was sore for a long period of time. But even when I fully recovered from that, it knocked me down from my normal routine. Like it knocked me out of whack because I was pretty active, right? Like I was working out 4 or 5 times a week. And then all of a sudden now I'm not at all because I physically can't. And then even when I was physically able to, it just got to the point I was like, how do I get back into this? And I had to rely on the discipline and consistency that I had over the 18 months prior to that accident to just say, I've done this before. I've been doing this and it's in preparation for this moment. It's all the work I put in is in preparation for this chaos and these things that come at me out of nowhere. So now I'm ready to get back into it. And being that it happened at the end of the year, it kind of allowed me to be present and more, close with the family because I couldn't, do so much. And it just really helped me realize what was most important. And then going into January, I was like, okay, new year, new goals, new me, you have that whole mentality or whatever that most people go through. And it's like, well, this is a good opportunity to start getting back at it. And I really have. Dude, I want to tell you, and I haven't told anybody this, but there isn't a day that has gone by where I don't think about that head injury and what could have been and what could have actually happened with how severe it was. And sometimes I catch myself going down into a dark place of could it still have, could I still have an issue next month? Could something still happen? And I'm like, that it was because of that accident. And so I probably will feel like that for a year until I know I'm really fully solid. And it's just a mental game at that point, but I know physically I'm fine.
To what you can control, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And, every time I get lightheaded from a workout, I would get lightheaded from a workout just because I was pushing myself before the accident. But now if I get lightheaded from a workout after the accident, I'm like, oh gosh, is this going to become a serious thing? And so it becomes a mental battle. But again, it comes down to the preparation and the discipline you had and the feelings you've had before. And you've been working out hard. This is a normal thing. And so you can learn from that.
Absolutely. And it's funny. I wasn't thinking about talking about this, but traveling with friend of the pod, Ryan Strand, to start the year, we took an awesome trip play some golf in California. And
yeah, that was a badass trip.
We were talking about this topic, and he brought up Michael Clayton, which I'd never seen the movie. Have you seen Michael Clayton?
No, is it George Clooney?
It's Clooney, and God, I cannot recommend it more. I can't believe it's gone this long. So I watched it as soon as we got back because he had made a comment about it, and he and I went on a text thread because basically Michael Clayton, he works for a large law firm that's going through there's a character conflict on who they are representing, this huge law firm, but Michael Clayton's role is he's a fixer. And when the shit hits the fan, he's a guy they call in to figure out a solution for all parties, the client, the firm, yada, yada. But he's an unsung hero. It's the dirty work. And I was like, man, this is a great watch. It just got my mind rolling on it. Just be the fixer. And you just said, I actually created my presentation as we kick off the year with just this break glass mentality. Like it's got the little gavel, a red box that says, in case of emergency, break glass. And Tim Grover talks about this in Relentless. These are the cleaners. These people are the ones you call when there's nothing else to do and you break the glass to have them come in. And I think there's no more honorable, more purposeful way to live. You can't go fixing everyone's problems that don't want them, but have the capability to be someone you can call and come in and say, this guy knows this specific situation. I'm calling that person, guy or gal. I think Paula is this in the lab. She winds up having the glass broken for her a lot to jump in when they have an emergency at the hospital. But just that mentality, be the kind of person that you have a skill set and the emotional ability to calm yourself down, that in those situations they can rely on you. So it's become a theme for this year that was unexpected.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the fixer thing and the cleaner and so I have Jack, my 12-year-old son, right? He's listening on the way up to Pine Top this week. We're spending the time up in the mountains, and he started listening to that book, and because he's a big Kobe Bryant fan, we talk about Mamba mentality. I was like, dude, you're 12 now. Like this book will start resonating with you, and he loves it. It's a really good book. So
yeah, I wish I would have read that at 12.
Right now, he's gonna have this mind. He's like, Dad, what do you think I am? Cooler, closer, cleaner? And I was like, well, I'll tell you what, we're closers, buddy. And then now we just work to be cleaners. Like we have the mindset already. Now it's just we got to put in the effort for the consistency and being that guy or being that gal. And so those are the things that we talk about. But it's funny you mentioned the fixer thing because there was this. Have you ever heard of culture index?
Yeah,
like self-assessment. We did that in Junto like 4 or 5 years ago, or whatever. Well, it nails you. I've done this thing 3 times now over the course of 4 years or whatever, and it's just like you have like a set of words along the top, and it's like answer these words in like how you are naturally, right? Like and it's just you just circle the words. You just choose the words that resonate the most with you. Mm-hmm. Some of them you have to like look up because your vocab may not know what the words mean, but that's okay. So you jot down those words, and then the bottom section is the same or similar set of words, but it's like how do you think you should be in a work environment? And so the whole purpose is to kind of like figure out where you are innately, your personality, who you are at the age of 12, 13, 14 doesn't really change much after that. Your experiences and thoughts and all that changes, but who you are, like it doesn't, your core doesn't change a whole lot.
The skills that you build enhance that core.
Exactly.
What you're kind of getting at. And that's,
so it picks up on that, your innate ability, and then it picks up on how you should be at work. And then it kind of tracks like, okay, are you under challenged? Are you overwhelmed? And it kind of so as an HR person or an employer, it helps identify where employees need to be, right spots, within your business and all that stuff. But the point is, there's 16 different profiles, and it nails you whatever one you fall into just by answering these words. And so I have been for the last 3 times I've done this. It's never wavered, and I've used different email addresses so they wouldn't know it was me taking the thing again,
just to test it. You're going the scientific method with this one.
Yeah, and so the profile I am is the craftsman, and I actually shared this in my BNI group last week, saying like, look, I'm the craftsman. This absolutely nailed me, this assessment, and I love project work. I love give me the complex stuff. Like my team's amazing, but if there's an opportunity where like it's just going to take some time to really focus and dial in and find the needle in the haystack, that's where I get involved. So if you need a craftsman for your payroll processing or whatever, give me a shout. And I got like 2 referrals from that little short commercial because people need the fixers. They need the people that can just figure it out. Even if I don't know the answer, or even if someone out there doesn't know the answer, be the person that figures it out, because there always is an answer. You just got to figure out which is the right one and communicate to find the positive solution for the best outcome.
And there have never been more resources to be able to do so. And this is something I want to tap in on. I don't think we planned on going this direction, but this is where the market is going. As you are defining success for yourself within your organization that you're employed by, or as a business owner or entrepreneur, the market is going to favor those that solve problems by themselves using this godlike technology that we're working with right now. But it's using this technology for creation, problem solving, as opposed to entertainment and dopamine.
Well, it's like the thing you said, I think in an episode, I don't know if it was the last one or a couple back, where it was like, I can't remember who said it, it was a quote, but it's like, everything's already been said, or everything's already been written, but you have to reread it or re-say it in order
Nobody
for it
was
to
listening.
Sit. Right. Nobody was listening. So it's like, the answer's there. Someone's already solved this problem. It's very rare that you're coming up with a problem that no one's ever seen before in the history of the world. And so you just got to, you figure it out, like find the solution, and that's the right people.
That quote has been on my head every time we log in, because that was what we struggled with in the beginning, right? Who are we to be sharing all these insights and regurgitate this knowledge? That's not the point. It's finding the people that you level with, where they're at and timing on their journey, and passing on that knowledge, because if they did hear it from this other source, they weren't listening. And it's like, that's the beauty of this. And the more that we ponder on it, like this episode in general will be on our heads on looking around corners, not too far into the future, because that's to a detriment. But am I prepared to, when the glass needs to be broken, do I have the skill set and the awareness of being to handle these problems as they come up? So I love that.
I wrote in the storybook over the holidays, like the difference between happiness and joy, and how we talk about perceptions of success and happiness, but in the end, really, it's about joy, I believe. And it's about like, when you're joyful, or when you're living a joyous life, like that's longevity. I think happiness is achieved short term, and it's like, hey, I'm happy right now. Like things are going great. Then things can go south, but you can still find joy in your life, right? Like overall. And so it was funny. My mom, she's like my biggest fan, and so she reads the flight, and she goes, did that come from me? Because I was just talking about, like, during the holiday, like we hung out over the holidays, and she was talking about joy and how joyful she was to be around the family. And like, even if you're not happy every day, you're joyful when you're around the people that you love. Right. And I was like, no, it just kind of popped into my mind. I thought it was a cool idea.
Yeah, but maybe it did. She's planted those seeds for so long.
She totally did. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like just continuing the conversation of like in your subconscious, you hear these things over and over, and sometimes you may think it's your idea, but it's not. And someone else has already been talking about it for a little while. And now you have an idea of how to articulate that and share it with the world. And so it just,
Karen's a stoic at heart.
She really is. She is the rock of the family.
That ties it back to that with the life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. Again, you have the power. This is your existence. You are projecting your internal state out into the world. There are things out of your control, but the one thing that is how you respond to it. And we keep driving that home because, again, maybe cliche sounds, I just know it's the truth. Your state is reflected back to you and how you approach these problems. And you talked about going down those dark paths and rabbit holes. That's my biggest, it's my biggest challenge. You start dwelling on a problem and you think you're working for solutions, but you start digging the wrong direction. Now you've got to come back up to get yourself to a level playing field to actually solve the problem. So huge awareness there. I think I wanted to, your boy, James Clear.
If you ever read Atomic Habits and you're listening to this podcast, pick up Atomic Habits. Great book.
It's another great quote about,
you're not rising to the goals that you set for yourself. You fall to the systems you have in place. Something along those lines.
Exactly.
So you can have massive goals, but if you don't have the right systems in place to achieve those, then you're not going to be able to get there.
Yeah. So it's practice. We're talking about practice. You get rewarded in public and in the market for what you do in private. And if you're spending the time actually reflecting on, okay, where are my blind spots? What could go wrong? And more importantly, what can I make a part of my daily operating system and skill set so when it does hit the fan, I can solve it. Not be set back, paused, frozen, fight or flight, but actually dive into the problem with a skill set to do it with grace, or as much grace as possible.
This is my best advice is you got to know where you're going and what you want. If you don't have clarity in what you want and where you're going, then chaos is just, you're always going to see it as chaos, and it's going to be like, woe is me constantly. You're always going to find negativity through that. But if you know where you're going and what you want, and also the people you want to do it with, and you've got that clarity there, chaos is just a part of the game. I mean, it's just a part of life. And so you look at it as like, well, dang, that's a setback. I could either let that derail me, or I could just be like, well, I know that this is just a blip on the grand scheme of things. So I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to fix the situation. I'm going to do what I need to do to get back to 100%. I'm going to resolve it in the best way I know how. I'm going to move forward, because 6 months from now, that thing's not even going to be on my radar. And so you just have to have this awareness of, this is a blip, man. Like, you can always change the course of your life if you if you know the clarity and you have an alignment of where you want to go and what you want to do and who you want to do it with. So I think that's just a really big
bamboo banger.
That's the first thing you got to do. Yeah. I mean, you just have to have this clarity, and self-awareness. So when these things happen, take your moments, reassess, reflect, heal. If you need to heal, go into a quiet period. If you need to go into a quiet period, but it's not going to derail you or stop you to the point where you don't feel like you could ever pick yourself up, or it's constant negativity. You got to find the positives in all situations. And usually the positives in a negative situation is the accomplishments and achievements that are on the other side.
Very well said. And like, back to another quote that I love: "The smooth sea never made a skilled sailor."
Yeah. How are you going to get better if you don't get challenged?
Lucky for all of us, no one's life is a smooth sea. So it's more the perspective of everything that you approach. It's like, have I had this problem before? Why is it still appearing? Because that's another thing, is a problem or a challenge will keep reappearing until you learn the lesson. And as soon as you check those off and work it into your operating system, that's when life starts to, you remove the friction. The sea does get a little smoother, and you get more flow. But I think at the end of the day, it's just realizing nature in general is constant struggle. Like, if you look out in nature, even the grass, everything is just pushing to survive and grow. And humans are no different. We just have the consciousness to go deep into these problems. We have choice, and to do all this complex cost benefit analysis. That's our struggle. We have abundance everywhere. Life is super comfortable, but now inside between our ears is where that challenge comes, and everybody's going through it.
Yeah, I would say 2025 has been has definitely been chaotic to kick off this pod, just all over the world. I mean, even, stock market towards the end of this was like the first time, what was I reading? Where leading from election day to inauguration day was like the first time where the stock market was the choppiest or the most intraday swings since like 15 years or something like that. And it's been, now it's kind of crept back up to its peak, but it's been like, I've never seen, I mean, I'm involved with that, and I watch the day-to-day, option stuff. Right. And so the intraday swings of the stock market are insane. It's just not, like a year ago, it wasn't like this. It was very flat, or even keeled up, or even keeled down. Like, it was just very consistent. Like, it didn't drop. Hey, I'm going up halfway through the day, just boom, 2% drop on the S&P 500. You're like, this doesn't happen. Like, 2% is a lot on the S&P in an intraday swing like that. So it's hard to manage, but just watching that, like, I think that really does relate with how the perception of the world is and how chaotic things are across the world. And so it's like, okay, well, looking at it that way, how do I hedge, the options trading and different things I'm doing? Like, what do I got to do to, like, I've got to work through these chaotic times, because it will get smoother. I mean, you always have the averages year over year in the market is always favorable to the long-term investor. And so if I'm going to play and have a little bit of short-term investing aspects there at just as a piece of my portfolio, I got to learn how to hedge those certain bets as those things come in. So it's just a unique way to kind of look at where things are. And it did start off this year. It's still fairly chaotic, but I think it's starting to even itself out as we kind of get back to a little bit of normalcy. And, there was a little bit of a limbo period, what's going to happen with the new president coming in and all that stuff. So I think now, give it another month or so and things will start, I think, tapering off, and, it'll do its thing. But long story short, 2025, I think, started off, especially, we just talked about the wildfires, and both of our teams out of the NFL playoffs. And,
that's the most important.
That means a lot to everybody else out there.
Yeah. We're in the definition of VUCA right now for sure. And the listeners, you all know it. You're all feeling it. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous out there in the middle of global conflict, economic challenges with the market, as you just mentioned, new leadership change in our home country. But again, how does all that impact you? Yes, it does impact you as an individual, but what are you doing in your day-to-day life to make sure that your kingdom, your personal impact to others is being maintained and is the real prime focus, because that has the ripple out.
Right.
And that's
you're going to let it affect you in a negative way when it's out of your control, completely. I think is the idea. But
I think that's the pod.
That's great.
Let us know what you're doing to impact your foundation, to make it stable and solid for the uncertain times. We are keeping that mindset that if we're doing the right things in our personal life, the environment around us will stabilize and we'll thrive together as we're defining success for ourselves. We'll be back at you next week.